You are listening to the More Life podcast.
More Life Podcast.
More life.
This is
the More Life Podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to More Life. I am so excited to have you here for another great episode. I always call them great episodes, but it always is based on who my guests are. And I've just had the pleasure of having the most incredible guests. I am really excited to get into this because it's something that I've thought about for a while, but have never really discussed. And I'm sure I'm not the only one out there who's wanted to have a conversation. So I thought I'd gather some people together, reach out, and then, we'd talk about it. And our topic today is intercountry adoption. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let my guests briefly introduce themselves.
Hey, my name is Fikrte. I'm a Brisbane-based actor. I'm a creative, and I also work in the community, do some youth work. That's pretty much me.
Hi, my name's Jonas. I'm adopted from Haiti in the Caribbean. I'm a business owner, family man, and also work with the community a little as well.
I'm Ben, adopted from Brazil, currently doing a bit of fly in, fly out work, father of two, and like I said before, happy to be here.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. My name is Sara. I am a student and I work as an educator in early childhood and support worker in a little bit of admin as well. Mm-hmm. I love my community and just connecting with people, and happy to be here.
I love it. Now we're going to keep this episode brief because we've been here for a while already. But also we know that this topic can go so deep, and so the second we touch on one thing, we might find that we're here for an hour. I'll just give a brief overview of how I got pretty much to wanting to talk about this. So when I was younger and lived in the Democratic Republic of Congo, we visited an orphanage as a family and as a class that my mom taught. And I found it very interesting seeing a different family structure to what I had, particularly when I'd come from somewhere where everyone was pretty much in the same family structure. I knew that my grandmother had also adopted kids, which would have been different, I'm sure, in a Zimbabwean village. But I didn't even really think about it much then. It was just, that's how it is. And then as I got older, I started watching those super emotional adoption videos. I'm sure you've seen at least one. And I always thought that it was a happily ever after moment and that was it and it was great. And, I'd move on feeling all great. And then I moved to the US, and that's when I started seeing intercountry adoption. And I started having these sort of just questions of, I wonder what it's like, particularly when the way I saw it as a kid was that my friends' parents are a different color to what they are. Some of the questions would be, I wonder how they learned how to do that hair and just all these different things relating to them. And then I started thinking more critically as I got older about the dynamics that might come in a family like that and even how the individuals would feel, and not just for the adoptees but also for the adoptive parents, and just thinking, I wonder what it's like for them. Do they ever feel like they have to prove themselves, or do they ever that sort of thing, especially knowing that now at least adoption's not always an easy process, and so you'd have to really want to do it to get there. And then I started hearing of some of the challenges as well. And that's when I went, okay, cool. I think we might want to talk about this. I know last month there were speakers at the UN who talked about illegal intercountry adoption that they had been part of. So was that last month? September, yes. And so, that's when I was like, okay, cool. Let's have this conversation. Let's do this. But so thank you so much for coming on, for being willing to be so open, I suppose, and talk about your lives as well.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for having us.
What we might actually start with is just a brief overview of your background and your family story as well.
It is really, really good to have a conversation, and I think we all have a story, and there's always different sides to every story. Growing up, I did feel like maybe my story was so different, or I was alone in a lot of the things I felt, and being able to connect with other adoptees and other people, I find that, those are the words to what I felt. And so it gave me meaning to the feelings I had, because there was some sort of confusion between I feel this, but I'm not sure what this is, and to be able to express that and connect with others. So, my story is like adoption is complex. It's not straightforward. Sometimes it seems, and no stories happy ending.
Yeah.
Life is complex. But yeah, I was adopted from Ethiopia, East Africa, and I've been with my adoptive parents way longer than I've been with my biological parents. My birth mum passed away when I was 6, so I was in an orphanage. And that's been a process.
Yeah, for
in
sure.
a journey.
Yeah, you were talking about not you being older when you moved here as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I can imagine that makes a difference as well. I don't know if that's the same as your stories.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, the age of when you got adopted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you've got like memories if you've come here when you're like 7 or even above. You have memories that you keep playing in your mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then if you're being adopted when you're like a baby, then that's all you know, and then you have wonder what was, so it makes a huge difference. Yeah,
for sure.
Every age comes with its own challenge.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
completely.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely second that the contrast of even just like meeting everyone and hearing different stories. Because for my case, I was adopted at 13 months, so I've been here since baby from Brazil, and like you said, you're brought up, and parents tried as best they could to, I guess, their version of normalizing or finding a way for you to feel like you're not so out of place.
Different, yeah.
But obviously in doing so, you're out of place. Like both my parents are, they're white Aussie. I eventually had a brother that's adopted from Colombia. He's, Afro as well. But yeah, it's definitely a different experience to even hearing what it would be like when you've got two sort of contrasting versions of your life sort of clashing, I guess, at points. So in some ways, I feel like my story is probably a bit more simple because
you were young,
been somewhat the same the whole time.
Yeah.
And I guess you just get to certain points in your life when then questions start arising based on things happening in your life.
For sure. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, myself, I was adopted at the age of 6 into a white Australian family in Ballarat, Victoria. It was a very turbulent sort of adoption, I dare say. It was very... being 6 years old, I felt very different and was treated very different to their own kids. And I was independent at a very young age as well. So I was independent probably from 14, 15 sort of thing. I ended up on the streets and that, and found my lovely wife at 20 and, got off the streets, which was great.
Yeah.
And, it's like everyone said, it's such a complex thing, adoption. I think everybody goes in with great intentions, but a lot of damage can get done at the same time.
Yes.
I've been here for 36 years now. If you can't tell, I speak through my nose like Australian. And I love this country, but also having the pleasure of going back and finding my birth mother, which is something that is very rare even for adoptees. I found her in 2007. My life's never been the same. But identity is all I can put to that, is that identity is a huge thing for adoptees, huge thing for myself. But yeah, I'm happily married now, over 23 years with my lovely partner, 3 kids, a thriving business, and I've got my family and my tribe right here as well.
Yeah.
So
that's so
it's a
good.
little bit about me.
Well, I've got a mic.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so mine's a bit dynamic. So I was adopted from Ethiopia when I was 6, 7. And with my 4 siblings. So I had 4 siblings. So 5 of us got adopted into a Caucasian family. And they already had adopted 2 other kids, one from the Philippines and one from Thailand.
Wow.
So it was, very, just finding your way in that family was challenging. But also at the same time, all of us kids had the similar experiences. And I had my siblings, which really grounded me as well.
Yeah.
So, but it wasn't easy. It was very challenging. But in some aspects, I was blessed that I had my siblings with me.
Yes,
and I also had, memories of back home. So I didn't feel too isolated.
Yeah.
And I've had like family back home that we were connected to as well. So it wasn't so crazy after hearing other people's adoption story.
Mm-hmm.
But when I hadn't heard other people's story, I really identified with the experience of adoption.
For sure,
Yeah. But yeah, I think the most challenging was just trying to find who I was as a person.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I lived two completely different lives. I literally felt like I lived in Ethiopia, our dad came and lived again here. Like
Wow,
it was,
yeah.
like
Even from
growing
such a young
up,
age as well.
yeah, growing up, I just felt like I had two lives.
Yeah, that's
And
incredible.
so, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. You've all briefly touched somehow on identity and
It's
sort of
massive.
looking for that, trying to figure that out. And I'm not sure if all of you have been back to your birth countries as well, but do you feel like going back has played a part in finding your identity now? And do you think it's something that's necessary for anyone who's adopted?
Good question. You go for it.
Yeah, going back home was huge for me. As a young man, I only grew up around white people, so I got bullied by white people. White people were my best friend is white.
Yeah.
And any time there was Indigenous or other African people around, we were still so, what's the word? Still felt like I couldn't really speak up.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
I still felt isolated because we all felt like we were owned by somebody or something.
Yeah.
Is the feeling that I felt anyway as a child and as a teen. So one going back home, just even like you leave Australia, you land in LA and you see some black people, you're like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Then you get to like New York and then it's just like really black. And then you reach Haiti and there's no white people and you're just like, wow.
that's
It was just
crazy,
like
yeah.
this huge culture shock.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing. It just what it does for, like I say, once again, I know that gender is such a huge thing now, but as a man, as a young man trying to find who I am, it just done so much for my identity.
Yes.
And finding my mum,
Yeah,
that was
for
the
sure.
biggest thing. Finding my family, finding my culture,
Yeah.
huge for myself.
For sure, yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to go back to Brazil when I was a bit younger, so I think it would be a different experience even now, just from learning a lot more and being a lot more open to adoption and things. But every story is different, and I guess it just depends on a lot of the internal dialogue of what's going on for people as well. But yeah, identity it was a massive thing. I think I spent a lot of the younger years just not knowing who I was, and therefore creating an identity based on what I thought was needed to be safe, and therefore not be sent back to an orphanage or given away.
Yeah.
I always felt like, well, that's a possibility if your birth mum can do it. And there's
Yeah, that's
a
an interesting
transactional
dynamic.
process in order to get you.
Yeah.
Well, then there could be a transactional process to give you away if you're not what they wanted or you don't fulfill those needs. So for me, I always felt like I just manufactured an identity. And so going back, definitely, I was like, oh, okay, like this is what Brazilian people do. And even going to places like Africa and other places where exactly that, where the tables are flipped after being in a white family and spending most of my time in white culture, where all of a sudden finding a white face is rare. As like you're saying, as a young man, it's super empowering.
Yeah.
Even just as part of, like we traveled as a family to Zimbabwe, and I'm not Zimbabwean, but there was still a little bit of identity of like, these are still somewhat my peoples, and I get it. Like, hey,
For
like,
sure,
like this man's like owning a business, and this man, like, it was kind of as a male, you're seeing black men that are empowered. Where you're like, okay, like I can identify with this. This maybe makes more sense to maybe who I can be, or possibilities which you just don't see on a lot of growing up.
I love that you both touched on it as well, that idea of representation, because you know, I'm sure you would have seen the discourse on The Little Mermaid of people going and so many people went and I mean, I'm not going to share any opinion on that, but so many people you know, and obviously it's the Facebook comments and not a representation of real life. But I saw a lot of comments saying, no, representation doesn't matter. It's something made up by adults to try to, you know, get money out of kids. And I always went, I don't know if until you've experience having yourself represented and you go, whoa, then you realize that, well, representation does matter. It's what you're saying of saying, whoa, there can be a black man who has this business, who has this job, who has this family, like that idea of seeing that it's possible for you. So yeah, it's really cool that you touched on that. I also saw you all nod and hum when you mentioned, what did Ben mention? The idea of feeling like you could leave as quickly as you came in. Is that something that's common, not necessarily among you, unless you want to share that? But
When you're young, maybe you can, you not make stories, but like put things together and say, hey, they pick me up, so they can put, it makes complete sense when you're young.
For sure, yeah.
And especially when you don't have people that ground you and just say, I've got you for life, this is me and you. If you don't have that, and of course you're going to not make up, but like it makes sense.
You're
As
going to
a
reason
young
it,
mind.
I suppose.
And when I was younger, I actually had thoughts of, I could actually go back. Completely.
I would touch on that also, is like when you're misbehaving in your adoptive family, or you're finding hard to settle, and because it is, you don't know, you just brought in and put into this situation, and you've got to try and cope without any support. That is a threat that got thrown around a lot. We'll take you back to Haiti, and you're thinking, it's like part of you sort of like, well, my mum's there, but then the other party is like, oh no, but it's bad over there, because that's all you're told. As a 6-year-old kid, you don't really, realise all the complexities. But so definitely to what Vic's saying, but also I support a lot of adoptive families with their kids and that as well.
Yes.
And it is something that definitely used to get thrown around a lot, that threat,
that's interesting.
and you don't really know what the threat means, but you kind of know that it's bad.
Even as you say that, I'm thinking, I've gotten the threat from my parents, we'll send you back to Zimbabwe, but it takes on such a different meaning, isn't it, when it's related to adoption.
Your parents are your biological parents.
Yes, that's right.
And so when you're in a house and they've got their own white kids, and you're treated differently to them, and the connection is different with them as well, especially when you're a bit older as well. If you've been adopted when you're older, you can they don't think you can understand much, but we feel and understand every little
body
thing.
language, like the energy, even as a young kid. You can feel that.
Absolutely.
I think they call it hypervigilance as well, isn't it? You're very just aware to any little changes.
Because you're just, when you're for me, in my adoptive family, I was hovering all the time. I was walking around on eggshells. I didn't really fit in. I knew I was being treated differently. And so you don't feel like you actually belong. So you don't belong inside your household. You don't belong out in public, because everyone tells you. In country Victoria, they tell you, don't you worry.
Oh, country Victoria.
And so that feeling of unconditional love. I've got kids. I love them unconditionally. They all know that. Dear God, they know it, right? But when you're adopted, for a huge percentage of us, you don't have that security of knowing that you are loved unconditionally. They can just get rid of you if they choose.
Interesting.
It's sorry. Can I add? I think it's my experience of being in an orphanage from 6 to 12 or so. As I was getting older, I was told in the orphanage that I wanted to be adopted because I see all these kids getting picked up by Canada, America, all these places, and the person that was, sending out these kids, as we called her mom, and she used to say, "Oh, you're getting older. Guess what happens? You're just gonna end up in the streets. You have no." So I wanted to please as much as I could. I wanted to make everybody happy. I just want to fix it. So I became so sensitive to people's. They might not say a word. I'd look at people's face and I go, "Oh, maybe they don't want me here. How can I make it that I'm accepted? How can I make it safe?" And it was even I'm going forward, but like Black Lives Matter movement and all that, I remember it was intense just watching all these people's story, and it triggers the things in you that you experience and things like that. And but then I felt guilt of feeling this, because I'm like, I'm sorry, my parents are white too, it's okay. I want to fix, I want to make everybody feel safe in the thing. So it's, but coming to with other adoptees, it's interesting how even though we don't have the same journey and the same experience, there is that understanding of some sort that we don't have to explain ourselves so much.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. Oh, I love that you've all found that. Yeah. Do you find, just talking about what it was like, how you felt as a child, do you find that your experience and your history as an adoptee affects other relationships? So whether it's romantic relationships, friendships, work.
Oh yeah.
I love when I ask questions and I already know the answer. I already know where it's going.
I remember when I was younger, I think I was like 16, 17, even like early 20s. And I'm like, if I get a boyfriend, I can't tell him that I'm adopted, because he'll just think I'm, it's not normal.
Yeah. Wow.
Because I never, when we first got adopted, we did connect with other adoptees, and then we kind of just went our own way.
Yeah.
But it was, it really does have an impact with intimate relationship, because I think it brings out a lot of trauma for you to open up. And then there's this trust thing. Trust is massive.
Yeah, for sure.
Massive. It plays a huge part.
Like, where do you even start? How much time do we have?
I'm like,
that's another podcast.
Half an hour, that's it.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Anything else to add?
Well, I'll try and keep it brief.
Yeah.
Definitely for me, like I said before, creating and cultivating an identity, which I thought I needed, meant I didn't actually really know who I was. So I was kind of I was introverted and didn't have a very good connection with like emotions and a lot of internal stuff that you kind of need to have a pretty good handle on if you want to give yourself to someone else in a relationship. So I found I've gone through a lot of the similar mistakes, especially with like communication and different things through a lot of relationships, because I just kind of dim myself and do the people pleasing and kind of just not know how to express and not know a lot of things. I think come with knowing yourself.
For sure, that's right.
So I definitely found you can't. I mean, it's your own. You got to do your own work, and everyone's going to be different. But I've noticed a lot more as I've gone on in life how much, I guess, the adoption part of my story has been a catalyst for how I've shown up in later relationships, and whether it's worked or not worked, even to the point of like my kids and being present for them and things like that. So.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. What's it like having kids now? Biological kids, particularly.
Yeah, do you have
I think
anything
it's
to add?
And I was like, I can share.
I'll say I love raving about my kids. I would just say back to what touch back on what Benny was saying too. My daughter's like, "Oh, Dad, you're such a simp." What's this simp? And then they're like, "Oh," and they're like, "Oh, you're always fussing on Mum and
it's
stuff."
Like,
and I'm like,
it's super like
and I'm
emotional.
like, well, that's not a bad thing, is it?
Yeah.
But it's funny because my kids don't realise I got a 14, 16 and a 22-year-old.
Wow, yeah.
My son gets it, but my two younger daughters, they don't realise, they didn't see what my wife has had to support and carry me through.
Wow.
I could do so much. I can make money. I can work really hard. I can do my best to be a good person. But when I am struggling or I get triggered by something or have that detachment or lack of self-worth, it's my wife that's been there by my side for 23 years with a young black man in Australia.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's just that I've got so much gratitude and love for her now because she has stood by me through all this stuff and helped me work through. She's helped me work through finding my mum and work through a lot of my childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. But yes, having kids is just, I so didn't want kids because I grew up in a house with 3 of us black kids adopted from Haiti and 5 of their own biological, and it was just a big dysfunctional soup, and we all got treated very differently, and I just couldn't think of anything worse. And then, you know,
then you end up here.
Right. And then, but it's been such a rewarding process. I didn't understand how rewarding it would be. The first time I really felt truly grateful for my kids, and this is going to sound terrible, but it was when I first found my mother in 2007. My son was 6 years old. He was the same age as that I was when I got taken away from my mum. You know, I got tricked. My mum got tricked and had me taken away from her. And, you know, communication was meant to be kept and all that, and it wasn't. And so I really put myself in my son's shoes and thought, imagine, you know, they used to think that I was crazy, telling them all these stories about my mum and dad and stuff. And my son, he knows who I am. He knew that's unconditional love. He would remember if he was taken away at 6 years old. And so, yes, it's one of those things where it's a beautiful experience, extremely traumatic for me because I didn't want to do it. But, you know, like I say, you find a way and you just want to do the next right thing to do the best that you can for your kids.
That's so interesting. Incredible. You found your mum at the same age as your son.
Yes.
That is so that. Oh my God, that's insane.
It was actually
the wisdom that came out.
That's not an accident, is it? Yeah.
No,
it's not.
And I've got it on film because that's when they
incredible.
ABC filmed it. But it was, it's amazing. It's that feeling of like, when you have your own, you don't have children.
No, I don't have children
but
yet.
when you have them, you just know they're yours. You just know, you have this feeling of like you're just going to do whatever it takes. Even if you don't want to do it, you're going to do whatever it takes to ensure that they've got a better life than what you had. Yeah, you know,
for sure.
And you don't want to remind them of it.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
You just want to let them be.
For sure, that's incredible.
There's definitely a feeling. Even I've spoken to like my siblings that have kids. There is, you know, when if it's not biological and if it is, like it's
That's interesting.
What about you with your kids?
Again, growing up, for me, one of my biggest goals was to be a parent.
Yeah, the complete opposite, isn't it?
Yeah. And maybe it was like selfish reasons of as if it would connect some dots because it would be the first person that would have my eyes or my nose or, you know what I mean? Like it's that first time where I could look at someone and be like, yes, they are actually a part of me or connected to me other than a name and some paper. And then when it happened, it's I don't know, it's next level. And I remember more so because I was probably still very sort of emotionally disconnected and things when my son came along. He was my first. And then when my daughter came along, it was a home birth and I was just a lot more, I guess, involved. And I just remember the moment she was born, there was just the click moment of like, damn, like my mum would have gone through this. And then because she gave birth to me in a hospital as far as I know, gave birth, and then when she could checked herself out, and then that was it. And just trying to like piece, like I wonder what that would have felt like. Myriad of reasons why she's gone through it that way, but just knowing that like that moment for me was like, whoa, like this is a lot next to go level through, and as a woman she's had to do that for whatever reason was insane. And then like you see your kids and you just like they do something like, damn, that's me. It's like
I love that.
It's like you're proud, and then if it's something where you're like, oh no, what have I done? But,
that's incredible. I love that. Oh man. You've briefly mentioned as well being in a community or meeting other adopted people. You also said I'm not sure who said it, but when you first came here, you did connect with people and then that faded. How important do you think it's been to be connected to someone else who's adopted?
Super important. Continue.
I'll take it. And now I'm going to shut up. But for me personally, similar situation when we were kids. You get, you know, your adoptive parents, they dress you up and get you ready for the show, and then you get paraded out, and all these adoptive kids all come together, and we're all supposed to adopt you together. And
Adopt you together.
Now be adopted.
And smile.
and smile and pretend everything's perfect. And so that, like Fik was saying, you sort of disband it, and the families go off and have to do the real work of raising a child, you know, and so that those get-togethers don't happen as often. And any time that, in my experience, in my life, that I've come across other adoptees, we're usually pretty broken or still working through our trauma, where it's sort of like we're not quite ready yet. We don't want to touch it. We don't want to spend too much time together, because we know trust is a big thing for adoptees. So we know that it can come in, and it's done. Got to say, if it wasn't for Linnell Long of ICAV, Intercountry Adoptee Voices,
The founder.
we would have.
Was she adopted herself?
Yes.
Long time ago, though.
Yes, amazing woman.
She created for.
If it wasn't for her, well, I wouldn't have met these amazing people. And it's a huge community out there, but we've found a way. We're finding a way to be able to communicate and not have to bring that trauma along with us. It's generally people that are working through or have worked through a lot of it. But that's my experience anyway.
I respect that. It's definitely work, and as we come together, it definitely makes a big difference. I know that it's your own timing, your own journey, and I respect that people might go, well, let me figure it out myself first, whether you're adopted from baby and you've processed your own journey, and being put together with other adoptees might trigger things and you feel a lot. How you do it is up to you. You try it out, but I've found definitely freedom and peace connecting with others. And
That's really good.
I've definitely found something similar to what Sara was saying earlier, was sometimes it helps you articulate something that might have been inside, or a thought or a feeling, and someone else says something similar from their experience, like, oh yeah, that's exactly it. That's the one. Like, so it's definitely in my experience, connecting with other adoptees, especially later in life, I find, because people kind of maybe have a little bit more handle on a lot of life experience and understand things a bit more than when you're a child. When, like you're saying, like, we had the same experience in our family. Early on, there was, I can't remember what the organisation was called, but it was these annual picnics, and go and be adoptees for this one day, and this melting pot of all these kids that are multicultural but aren't, because all their parents are white. So there's like some, you know, Latino kid over here, and this Afro kid over here, and this Asian kid over here, but we kind of still only know how to be white because that's how we're brought up.
Sure,
So it's kind of can be just as confusing as it is comforting. And later on though, I found, again, like having someone like Linnell and ICAV has brought, I guess, maybe a lot more awareness to how big the community is as well. You know, a lot of times you're not quite sure, like when you're bringing it up, how to bring it up, depending on your own family dynamic as well. Like our family, funnily enough, like my adoptive dad was adopted through Australia, like within Australia. So, but again, he was adopted adopted by white people. So it's not quite the same.
But you feel like there's some sort of potential understanding?
Maybe he didn't. It was just, we never spoke about it at home, even though 3 out of the 4 people in the family were adopted. I don't know.
Interesting.
But so then coming along to something where there's a space where you can start to speak about things can just open up a lot of conversations that may not have been had otherwise, or that you just carry through life by yourself thinking, I'm the only one, so I'll just work this out myself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Just shout out to Linnell.
Yes.
She's
Yes.
amazing.
The link will be in the bio.
But I remember when Linnell came to Brisbane, because she's from Sydney, and she wanted to catch up with the adoptees that are here. So I wasn't really super connected with adoptees here. And then so I said, let's have dinner. And then we had dinner, and I was just listening to everyone talking, and I'm like, I'm normal. I'm cool. The thoughts that I had, and the just the things that I went through is so valid. And it's okay for me to think the way that I thought, and it's okay to feel the way that I felt. Because there were times where I was like, am I just whinging? Am I ungrateful? Am I like what is it about me that why am I feeling these? And then I know when I was around them and having that conversation, I was like, you know what, I'm good. There's nothing wrong with me. And it's a normal process that you go through when you have these kind of experiences. So I think it just validated a lot for me. And since then it's I just felt more free. Because all these things started getting lifted off me. And not everyone's ready to have this conversation, and not everyone's ready to be with other adoptees either. But the time will come, and I think letting them know that these things exist. It exists, like the group exists. So when they're ready, they can come. When they're ready to have a conversation.
There are a lot of resources available.
It matters.
And we will put like a link in the episode as well for the Intercountry adoptee voices, but also everything else that you have too. For sure. I hate that our time is coming to an end, because I can see how we are literally skimming the surface, and I'm like, I just want to like take this deeper, but we only have so much time. But is there anything else that you would advise someone who has been adopted, maybe is potentially starting to think about their identity, especially if they've come across this podcast? It's probably because they're thinking about it. And if they decided to listen, it's probably because they're interested. Any advice for that person?
I think you're not alone. Definitely you're not alone in the process, in this journey. And we got you. If you feel like reaching out, do reach out. There are people out there that care and are there. I've still going through.
My experience, I'd say follow your curiosity rather than like dim it. You kind of, again, finding that balance between having gratitude for maybe being in a better financial or whatever situation, depending on where you've been adopted from, but you're still valid in being curious as to who you are, where you've come from, and if you spend your time thinking, I better not, because I'm going to upset someone else, or who knows, I think you're going to spend a long time maybe wondering. So
it'll catch up with you maybe.
I concur with both what these guys say, and like anything, whether it's trauma related or you're looking to get educated, reach out to the available resources, i.e. us, ICAV, etc.
I've got a mic. What's my advice? I think for me it would be, adoption is not an identity. It's not who you are. It's an experience that we go through. Really cool. So I used to make it's my identity. And so everything that came with it affected how I lived, And so, and then when I look at it from the point of view of it's an experience, it's so much easier to deal with.
For sure.
And, and the other thing is with these catch-ups that we have, it's not where we sit around the circle and cry and talk about our feelings. It's not that. We actually
recount the story again.
If you want to talk, we're there to listen. But we have fun. We go out. We eat dinner. Whatever. It's like a normal catch-up. So it's not. Don't let that scare you, because I know a few people have kind of don't want to come because. It's not. We're not sitting around the circle, lighting candles and crying.
I mean, that's normal for somewhere else.
Oh yes, thanks for the. It is normal. But just reach out and don't identify with it.
It's quite interesting because I've known both of you for a little bit, and I actually didn't know you were adopted until much later on, probably even this year. So it's not something that hi, my name's Sara and I'm adopted. You know what I mean?
Sometimes it comes up in a conversation, shopping center. So where are you from?
How did you get here?
And I find myself saying I'm adopted, and they'd be like, oh wow, your parents must be so amazing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
where are you from? Code for why are you black?
Yes, I was going to say, I have had someone say, no, what is that brown face like? And I was like, oh, okay. And she was very gentle. She was an old lady. She was like, I used to teach in PNG. It's so nice to see a brown face again. So I'm like, yeah, but can we phrase it differently?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
I think it's
it was-
more.
yeah.
Roll
Yeah.
with it, eh?
I think it will stop eventually
I think-
because it's such a diverse country we live in.
Yeah, we're getting
Where are you
multicultural.
from means you don't belong here.
I
Like,
always
what are you
say,
trying to tell
yeah,
me?
Your charm side?
I think when we're like us having this conversation and being open about it is going to help.
For sure. That's
Yeah,
right.
and just being honest with our own experiences rather
Yeah.
than trying to cover it up and not make people feel bad. But it's important to
Yeah.
completely be
If you
honest.
don't
That
know
then
us, it's okay.
yeah.
Now, I did say I would avoid going deep, so this next question could take it in all directions. If you want to skip the question, that's okay. And if you want to just give a one-liner and expand it in the comments of the post for this, you can do that. But what's one word of advice you would have for adoptive parents? And yeah, I'd get that.
Parenting is hard. Like, as these guys were speaking about them being fathers and their experience.
Yeah.
I've been scared of being a parent. I don't want to mess my child up. Like, it's it's a big thing.
Sure. Actually,
And,
we could make it parents who have adopted or people who've been adopted who are now having kids, whichever one you prefer.
Yeah, I mean, look into it. It is a process. It's not like once you adopt, you're an amazing person. There's a big journey that comes with it. It's raising a child is a challenge, right? And adoption, I think educate yourself prior, during, all of it.
Continue to educate.
Yeah, as we all need to.
Yeah.
But yeah, continue.
Cool.
I'd say for adoptive parents, maybe just being mindful that your parenting story or your parenthood story is not the same as your adopted child's story. I find, like, for myself, I get adopted, then my name gets changed. Like, my name was originally Marcos Flavio da Silva.
Wow.
And then, but my birth certificate and all my official papers, I'm Benjamin James Kelleher.
Wow.
But it's kind of like, because that's what my parents, obviously, when they were going to, wanting to conceive and do it the natural way, that's what they would have called if they had a son.
Yes.
So it's kind of realizing that maybe your adopted child, depending on the situation of when they were adopted, they had a life and a story and an identity before you stepped in and took over and created your own sort of family story.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just maybe just be
Someone else
mindful.
said talking about adoption. So this was an older person adopted as well, and they were saying that it's like picking up a book that's already had halfway and just continuing. You're not gonna fully grasp everything.
Yes.
You're gonna try the best you could, but I think that person with an adoptees, that person comes with like a book full stories
Already
and
written,
experiences, and so be
that's
aware of that.
interesting.
Well, first of all, I'd say that was a sexy ass name. I'd be mad too.
It was a good name.
I'm only joking. One piece of advice for parents looking to adopt would be ask yourself why you're really adopting. Why is it that you're really
Second
doing
that
it?
one.
Okay,
Yeah, completely.
That's what I'd say. And for parents that have adopted, don't be afraid to ask for help. There's no shame in asking for help. If you try internalize it, can often turn into abuse, and that has far more damaging effect than what asking for help would be doing, because parenting's not easy and nobody is an expert at it.
Yeah, for
there
sure.
are resources
Yeah.
available for that as well. ICAF, Intercountry Adoptees Family, Support Family. And there are. Just look.
Yeah, that's cool.
I also just wanted to jump in real quick because I found with my experience again, being curious with your adopted child is a great opportunity for connection.
Yeah.
Like if you've adopted them from somewhere and you don't know the culture or the language from where your child has come from, obviously they're probably going to want to know that stuff at some point.
Yeah.
Learning together, like, that's going to connect you in an amazing
100%.
way.
Yeah.
it's an opportunity that could be missed otherwise.
That's incredible.
100%. I'd second everything that everyone
I
said
love
here.
that, yeah.
But I also want to say thank you to my adoptive parents, because like if I went through the same thing, I don't know how I would have done it.
Yeah.
Because especially as I'm becoming more like I'm 30 something. And I'm like, if I was a mum now and I had 7 kids, I wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, for
you know, so I just want to say thank you in that aspect.
Yeah.
But I do have a few advice. One, if you're planning on adopting, like what he said, really ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Because that matters. Is it, are you trying to fulfill an image that you have? Is it from like you miss something, so you want to fulfill that?
Yeah.
Or is it because there is something that's told you in your heart and says, you know, go and get this or whatever.
Yeah.
But like the reason why is it matters for the future, for everything.
Yes, yeah.
And the other one is when you have adopted, you're not adopting a child where you can bring here and then shape them into whatever you want them to be. You're actually adopting someone that's got so much roots attached to them. So it is so important that they have that. Not, you don't have to have the knowledge, but at least have access how, if the child wants it, that they can guide them to it.
For sure.
And what Ben said, be curious with your child and try and understand where they came from, what tribe, because it all matters, because your DNA has everything that where you came from. So there's things that's going to happen that you're not going to understand. And so they need to have these options available. And the other one is don't force connections. Allow the connection to happen naturally.
Yeah.
Because when you force them, it just, it doesn't look good. It has to naturally build. And I think the way, it has to be organic, and that lasts so much longer in the long run.
Exactly.
And you're not going to have issues as you get older.
For sure. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's pretty much it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, let's play a quick game before we go. So I've got these paddles here. So a little game time. It's true or false. Green is true.
True.
Red is false. I thought that was a universal language, but
Which universe?
stop though. Alrighty. So the first one is the majority of adoptions in Australia are intercountry adoptions.
Oh, that's a hard one.
I'd say I don't know, but I'd say true.
I don't know. It's a bit hard.
I'm gonna say true.
Yeah, I'll probably lean towards true as well.
I'm not sure.
I have seen some middle ones. True.
I'd say true to the majority of intercountry adoptions are the ones that get the limelight.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Get the
but
media.
I have started meeting people that are adopted.
Locally.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe it's not recognized as much because
And I think
I'm so excited for the
slow
answer.
it down. I think they try to slow it down as well.
Yeah.
Because it could be legalities, legal stuff. I think.
but
I'm
a
not
lot
sure.
of foster care.
Yeah,
in
foster
a
care.
lot
Yeah,
of
they
different
encourage foster care.
ways as well. Yeah.
They encourage foster care, but they sort of tried to slow down the actual adoption thing.
For sure. Yeah.
People it's trying to sue.
We do stand
So excited
out.
for this answer.
Yeah.
So according to the ABS, the most recent report, 56% of adoptions in Australia are intercountry adoptions. Yeah, so they are still local adoptions are growing. The others are growing, and it is sort of stable, but they're still the majority. But yeah. All right, next one. Adoption rates in Australia have increased over the last 50 to 60 years. True or false?
50 or 60.
50 or 60.
60 years. Have they increased or decreased over time?
It's slowing down
Depends
now.
on the country, I reckon.
It's slowing now, but I think
But
true.
I
it's
think
increased.
it's depending on the country, because when some countries were closed, the people from Australia were going to different countries that were still open adoptee.
We're just talking about Australia.
Adoption in general, yeah, in
I'm
Australia.
going to say
It
it's
decreased.
slowed down.
I think so.
And I hope.
For the past 50 years.
50
Yeah,
years
over the
with
past 50 years.
I'd say true.
Oh,
Have they increased or
Has-
decreased? So
I
we've
would
got
say
increased, decreased, increased, increased. You are correct. So it is, as in, sorry, I should clarify.
which one?
Jonas is correct. They have
Nice.
decreased over the last 50 to 60 years because of various factors. So
yeah,
social
yeah, yeah.
factors.
Yeah, makes
In the past, adoption rates were very high because unwed mothers couldn't keep their kids, so they'd have to always adopt them out. it's now more encouraged, obviously, to keep a child, even if you have difficult circumstances. Economic factors, there's now increased support for single parents. So in the past, if you're single, you just had to adopt your kid to a couple, a married couple. And then things like declining birth rates, increased availability and effectiveness of birth control have all contributed to slowing things down.
Okay.
But you're right, it is quite steady at the moment, but starting to decrease.
Because
I forget too that it's 2023. So to me, you said the last 50 years. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
19,
Yeah,
exactly.
We did the adoption thing of going, wow, way too.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next one. American families adopt more children than all other countries combined.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, well done. Yeah, that's true. So American has the highest adoption,
Yeah.
which is really interesting.
Internal
They do.
stuff.
Yes,
there is-
exactly. Yeah.
internal, yeah.
The other top countries for adoption are Spain, France, Italy, Canada, the Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, and Australia made it up into the top
White
countries.
hopes.
Yeah, exactly. What did you say? Great.
Sorry, I said all the great white hopes.
Oh, I love it. White saviorism. No.
What is it? What?
Let's not get into that.
All right, let's
Move on.
No,
finish it
that
off.
was going to be... No, it's not. It'll be too deep. We'll
You say
be
white
here for way
saviour?
too long.
Is that
Yeah.
what you say? Yeah. No, that is the mentality.
Yeah.
that I
But
have
like I
with
said,
the
we
white-
could go for
not go there.
hours.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, man.
The Angelina Jolie effect.
Even as we're going through this, I was like, no, we won't have time. No, we won't have time. All right. The last one. Adoption requirements and processes have become more relaxed in the past 10 to 20 years.
No.
I love that you all do that.
Oh, wait, that's
Yeah.
all.
Yes, that's right. Adoption requirements are a lot more stringent, particularly for safety reasons, has been the biggest thing, which is great. So things like the closure of the Ethiopia-Australia Intercountry Adoption program. China has a long list of exclusions, which I was reading through, which are very interesting. It includes things like anyone over the age of 50, anyone who's terminally ill, and interestingly enough, anyone who has a facial deformity cannot adopt from China. But yeah.
For real.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, we can break it down too, isn't it?
I was just thinking, it's like I love the fact that it's getting harder because
Yes.
it means the focus is more on the child
Yes, for
than
sure.
than the parent.
person who wants
that
But
wants
I've
the
heard
child.
mixed
And so
messages too.
Yeah.
I
About
do
that.
love that. I won't
Yeah.
pretend.
That's cool, yeah. Well, before we go, one last question. What does more life mean to you?
Go.
For me, it means more of what I'm doing, living true to myself and true to my values and family. I've found my tribe. I'm still finding out who I am. And so that's what more life means to me.
That's cool, yeah.
For me, more life means there's layers to it. There's depth in just experiences, life journey, and it's more than what you can see on the surface. There's a lot. It's opportunities, choices, all of it. There's a lot.
That's
It's
cool.
deep.
I'd say more life means to me maybe more awareness. The more aware you are, the more you get to take in, the more you experience. So,
For sure, that's
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. More life for me, with what Ben said, is being aware of yourself, and then how much of yourself do you show? It's more of me rather than like hiding, you know, or, you know, for example, like we people please, we we act in such a way to be accepted, but it's to say, no,
Yeah.
this is me, how much of myself am I going to express, like
Yeah.
truly express
Wonderful.
myself. So
Yeah.
that's
Aw.
more life for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on and for, giving up your Saturday morning for this, for a conversation that some random little girl wanted to have.
Not random.
But yeah, I really appreciate you being so open. Like I said, the conversation could have gone anywhere, and I would have loved that, and we might, one day in the future maybe consider it. But yeah, I really hope that this gets to someone who wanted to also talk about it some more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gigi.
Thank you.
Oh, bye everyone. More love and more life to you.